The simulation chamber hummed with barely contained energy as Cadet Daniel Hayes stood at attention, his breath steady despite the weight of 100 eyes upon him. Around him, representatives from 17 different species observed from the viewing gallery, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and synthesized voices. At the center of it all stood Sergeant Krathxer, a towering Valorian whose exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lights of the Galactic Defense Academy. Pathetic, Krathxer's voice echoed through the chamber, his translator rendering his disgust in perfect standard. Another human, soft and sentimental. Your species joins our ranks and expects to survive on compassion. Daniel said nothing. He had learned in his 6 months at the academy that silence was often the best response to Krathxer's provocations. The sergeant's mandibles clicked in what Daniel had come to recognize as contempt. Today's exercise will test your worthiness. You will face the Omega Protocol, a simulation designed to break the weak and forge the strong. Your mission: eliminate all hostiles in the colony habitat. No exceptions. No mercy. Ruthlessness, Cadet Hayes, is the only virtue that matters in warfare. Melissa Chen, Daniel's fellow human cadet and closest friend at the academy, shifted uncomfortably in the observation deck. She knew Daniel better than anyone here. She had seen the photographs he kept hidden in his footlocker, images of a younger brother lost to a raid on the outer colonies, a tragedy that had driven him to enlist despite Earth's relatively peaceful nature. The simulation began. Daniel found himself materialized in a perfect recreation of a colony habitat, specifically Outpost 7 on Kepler 442b. The architecture was painfully familiar: prefabricated structures, hydroponic gardens visible through reinforced windows, even the distinct smell of recycled air that characterized humanity's frontier settlements. His HUD flickered to life, displaying multiple hostiles scattered throughout the complex. The first encounter came swiftly. 3 armed combatants rounded a corner, weapons raised. Daniel's training took over, muscle memory honed through countless hours of drills. 3 shots, 3 targets down. His pulse rifle barely whispered as it fired. Efficient, Krathxer's voice crackled through the comm. Continue. Daniel moved through the habitat with mechanical precision, his movements a deadly ballet of violence and efficiency. Hostile after hostile fell before him. Each room cleared, each corridor swept, each threat neutralized. The other cadets in the observation deck murmured their approval. Even the notoriously critical sergeant seemed impressed by the human's performance. But Melissa noticed something the others didn't: the slight hesitation before Daniel entered the residential sector. The way his breathing changed, becoming more controlled, more deliberate. She leaned forward, her hand pressed against the observation window. The residential sector was where everything changed. Daniel's HUD marked 17 hostiles in the communal living area. He approached cautiously, his weapon raised, and then he saw them. His breath caught in his throat. Children. The simulation had populated the hostile markers with children, alien children of various species, their eyes wide with simulated fear, clutching toys and clinging to furniture. The computer had designated them as enemy combatants, their markers glowing red on his display. Engage the hostiles, Cadet Hayes, Krathxer's voice was sharp. You have your orders. Daniel's finger moved to the trigger, then stopped. His military training warred with his humanity, creating a paralysis that stretched into seconds. Ruthlessness, Cadet. That is what separates survivors from casualties. Eliminate the hostiles. In the observation deck, cadets from a dozen species watched, waiting to see if the human would break. Several had already wagered that he would fail, that his species' weakness for emotional attachment would be his undoing. Melissa held her breath. Daniel lowered his weapon. Negative, Sergeant. His voice was quiet but steady. I refuse the order. The observation deck erupted into chaos. Crafts's exoskeleton flushed with anger, the biological equivalent of turning red with rage. "You dare! You said ruthlessness is the only virtue that matters in warfare," Daniel interrupted, his voice growing stronger. "You were wrong, Sergeant. Ruthlessness without purpose is just barbarism. You wanted to see what makes humans dangerous. This is it. We don't just fight, we choose what we fight for." He turned to face the observation window, though he couldn't see through the one-way glass. "My brother was 7 years old when raiders hit our colony. They were ruthless. They followed orders. They eliminated all hostiles without question. He was holding his toy shuttle when they killed him." Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. "You designed this simulation to break us, to strip away everything that makes us who we are. But ruthlessness isn't strength, it's the absence of it. Real strength is knowing when not to pull the trigger. Real warriors protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what you don't understand." The simulation flickered and died. Daniel stood alone in the empty chamber, his weapon still lowered. Crafts descended from the observation deck, his massive form towering over the human cadet. For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension in the room was suffocating. Then something unexpected happened. The sergeant's mandibles moved in a pattern Melissa had never seen before, the Valorian equivalent of a smile. "Do you know why I designed this simulation, Cadet Hayes?" Crafts's voice had lost its harsh edge. 17 species, 17 different perspectives on warfare, and in 3 years of running this program, you are the first to refuse. Daniel's expression remained guarded. "The galactic defense requires soldiers who can fight," the sergeant continued. "But more than that, it requires soldiers who know why they fight. Ruthlessness is easy. Any creature can kill without thought. But to face the hardest choice and choose compassion, that is the mark of a true warrior." The observation deck was silent now, all eyes on the sergeant and the human cadet. "You passed, Cadet Hayes, not despite your refusal but because of it." Melissa exhaled, relief flooding through her. Daniel's shoulders remained squared. "With respect, Sergeant, if passing requires traumatizing cadets by forcing them to confront simulated child murder, perhaps the test itself needs reevaluation." A ripple of shock passed through the alien observers. No cadet had ever criticized the sergeant so directly. Crafts's mandibles clicked, but this time in what could only be interpreted as approval. "Spoken like a leader, Hayes. Your species may be new to the galactic stage, but you bring something we have lost over millennia of warfare, the memory of why peace matters." As Daniel was dismissed from the chamber, Melissa met him at the exit. She didn't say anything, just squeezed his shoulder. He nodded, understanding passing between them without words. Later that evening, as the twin moons of the Academy's host planet rose above the horizon, Daniel stood on the observation platform overlooking the training grounds. The weight of the day's events still pressed upon him, but there was also a strange sense of lightness. Melissa joined him, 2 cups of terrible Academy coffee in hand. "You know," she said, passing him a cup, "the betting pool had you at 30-1 odds for passing." Daniel managed a small smile. "What did you bet?" "Everything I had," she replied without hesitation. "I know you, Daniel. You're the most stubborn, principled person I've ever met. There was no way you were pulling that trigger." They stood in comfortable silence, watching as other cadets cycled through their evening drills below. "Do you think it made a difference?" Daniel asked finally. "What I said in there?" Melissa considered the question. "I think 17 different species just learned that humans don't survive because we're ruthless. We survive because we refuse to let the universe make us cruel." Daniel raised his cup in a small toast. "To being human, then." "To being human," Melissa echoed. "And to teaching the galaxy that mercy isn't weakness, it's the hardest strength of all." As the moons climbed higher into the alien sky, Cadet Daniel Hayes allowed himself to hope that perhaps his brother's death might yet have meaning, not through vengeance or ruthlessness, but through the simple, defiant act of choosing humanity, even when the universe demanded otherwise. That, he realized, was what truly made humans dangerous.